This is a sesame stir fry with a sauce that contains sesame oil, tahini, and sesame seeds. I've been on a soft food diet for 2.5 years, and this type of stir fry is one way that I get a lot of vegetables. For ingredients, we're going to need soy sauce, garlic, ginger, brown sugar, tahini, sesame oil, rice vinegar, and sesame seeds. For the sesame seeds, I'm going to put them on top of the bowl at the end as opposed to mixing them in the marinade. We're going to start with 1/4 cup of soy sauce. I'm using the lower sodium soy sauce because that's what they sell at Costco. I don't think it matters either way which one you use. I have a little bit of this marinade left over from the last time I made it, and I'm just going to add this all into that jar. For brown sugar, we're going to need 2 tablespoons. There's 1. And 2. We need a tablespoon of sesame oil. And a tablespoon of rice vinegar. Next is the tahini. Tahini is ground up sesame seeds, just like peanut butter is ground up peanuts. And because it's ground up sesame seeds, it's like natural peanut butter where the oil and the ground up seeds kind of separate. We need 1 tablespoon of tahini. The sesame seeds I'm going to add at the end and sprinkle on top of the dish, as opposed to putting it in the marinade. Once everything's in the jar, I put the lid on and shake it up really hard to get the tahini to blend in. For ginger, I use a trick I learned on the internet where you take the ginger that you buy, the knobs of ginger, put them in the food processor, and then portion them out into squares. And so for this recipe, I'm going to be using 2 squares. If you were using a fresh knob of ginger, you would use about 1/2 inch. For this recipe, I try and use as many vegetables as I can because I'm going to be putting them in the food processor. They're going to get really tiny, so you can fit a lot of vegetables in without bulking up the plate very much. Using the food processor also saves a lot of time. You can chop everything up by hand. If you want to do it more quickly, you can put everything in the food processor. I have some trouble with the peppers coming out chopped up, but everything else works really well. For my veggies, I have an orange bell pepper, a carrot, an Anaheim pepper, a yellow squash, celery, and green beans. Using the food processor means that this is a meal I can get on the table in under 30 minutes because the food processor is doing most of the work and I prepare the marinade ahead of time, and then I either freeze a portion of it or I prepare it a few days early and leave it in the fridge. I'm using udon noodles. If you look at the package, it's separated into 3 portions inside the package, and I use 1/2 of one of those portions. If you weigh it out, it's about 2 ounces. I cook the noodles first while I prep the veggies. I break them in 1/2 and cover them with water. Next, I start the edamame, Edamame is a really good source of protein, so I try and use it in stir fries. It's frozen, so first I'm going to need to defrost it. I'm going to pour it into the bowl, cover it with hot water, and let it defrost. And while I'm getting the rest of the vegetables ready, the edamame is going to go in the food processor as soon as it's defrosted. Now that the water's boiling, I'm going to cover the edamame and the noodles. With the noodles, I can cook them till the water completely boils off, in which case they'll be total mush, or for the time on the back of the package, whichever is easiest for you to eat. For the vegetables, they'll be going in the food processor, so for most of them, I'm going to cut them in half and then cut them into 1-inch pieces and put them in the food processor. I'm going to start with the yellow squash. I think I'm only going to use half of it. I'm going to cut off the end, only use half. Cut it in half and then into 1-inch pieces. The noodles are boiling to mush. The squash pieces are really tiny. I'll set the pieces aside to add into the sauce later. Next is the celery. Same thing, I'm going to cut off each end and then cut it into 1-inch pieces and put it in the food processor. I added the celery. Now for the Anaheim, I'm going to cut the top off, cut it in half, and cut it into 1-inch pieces, just like everything else. This is about the hottest pepper that I can handle. It's not really going to add much kick, but I'm hoping that it'll add more than a green pepper flavor. I'm going to rinse out the seeds before I put it into the food processor. It didn't work perfectly. There are some pieces that are much larger than the others. The pieces didn't get very uniform. And the same thing's probably going to happen with the orange bell pepper too. That's been my experience trying to put bell peppers in the food processor. I'm also cutting the orange bell pepper into 1-inch pieces. It definitely left some large chunks that I'm going to have to pull out and cut by hand. And now for the carrot, which is fourth verse, same as the first. I'm going to peel it, cut it in half, and cut it into 1-inch pieces. I have a rainbow plate of veggies, and now I'm going to start with the green beans, which I am not going to do in the food processor. I'm going to line them all up in a line, take off one end and then the other end, and then cut them into small pieces, probably about 1 millimeter to 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to drain the water off the noodles and set them to the side. Don't forget the edamame. We're going to put them in the food processor with some hemp seeds and some pumpkin seeds, which are also 2 other good sources of protein. I'm eyeballing 2 tablespoons of hemp seeds, which is 6 to 7 grams of protein, and 2 tablespoons of pumpkin seeds, which is about 9 grams of protein. Everything's going to get ground up, and my final source of protein is a can of beans. I've had a tablespoon of oil heating up in the pan over medium heat. And now I'm going to start adding in all the vegetables and get everything cooking. I'm adding in all the vegetables at the same time. I'm not doing them in any particular order. If I had done an onion with it, I would have cooked the onion for 1 or 2 minutes first and then added in the rest of the vegetables. But today I'm just adding the whole pile in at once. I'm going to pull out these larger pieces of pepper that didn't get ground up well enough in the food processor, and I'm going to cut them up by hand. After a few minutes, I'm going to add in the edamame hemp seed pumpkin seed mixture. And now I'll add in the garlic squares and mix them in, and the garlic. Now I'm going to add in a big pinch of salt, which is about half to 1 teaspoon worth. It's going to help the vegetables cook down by drawing the water out. Once the volume or the size of the pile of vegetables has decreased, I'm going to go drain and rinse the can of beans before I add them in. The reason I consider this a fast dinner is because I have the marinade prepared ahead of time. Tonight's is going to be from the freezer. I portion it out and then I freeze the portions, and I just need to pull it out of the freezer. Or if you do meal prep, like before the week starts, you can prepare the marinade then, and then all you have to do is dump it over the vegetables. Frozen marinade is going to cool down the mixture quite a bit, so it'll take a few more minutes before everything is back to temperature and warm. I set it against the bottom of the pan and wait till it starts liquefying or breaking up into pieces. This is enough for 2 servings or more, remembering that the servings for vegetarian food are larger than if you eat meat. And I'm honestly starving, so I'm maybe going to try and eat the whole thing because I haven't had anything to eat today yet. The serving size for vegetarian food is larger than for meat eating because it takes a larger portion to get the same amount of calories as you would if you were eating a piece of meat. Now that the marinade has melted and warmed up, we're finally going to add back in the noodles that we cooked earlier. If you like spicy, you can add in chili crisp. I'm just a baby about spice, so I never add anything like that in with mine. Once I mix the noodles in, it's ready. And now is when I add the sesame seeds on top, a tablespoon.